Welcome back to this week's episode, guys. We're so excited because we're getting into the fun stuff. Today's topics are going to be all about hiking and biking with your dogs.
Yeah, so we're in the perfect area being in the Ottawa Valley for both hiking and biking with your dogs. I do it fairly regularly with my dogs. It takes a lot of work to be able to go hiking and biking, especially if you choose to go off leash hiking and biking. But some simple tips and tricks. For me, I started out by teaching my dogs everything on leash. They learned where a proper heel was, and they also learned follow or lead. So depending on if you're on narrow trails or wider trails, it's really good to be able to teach your dogs all of these things. It's also good to have a quick recall for them if you run into a critter. It's really good to have all of those kind of in your pocket if you need. If you're doing long hikes or bikes with your dogs, especially biking, if you're biking with your dogs, you really want to wait till they're old enough and their growth platelets are done growing or fusing together, or however that technical term is. It's usually about 2 for some guys. Some of the bigger guys are a bit longer, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. Just don't go for a 5-10K bike or hike with them while they're still growing, because that could hurt them. You can easily ask your vet when they think is a good time to start these things, if that is your lifestyle. My Huskies, I actually didn't really know this. I started too early. I started running my Huskies at about 6-7 months, trying to burn that energy. And yeah, they had limps and their bodies were aching, and my one male blew his knee. And these are things that I wish I knew early on as a pet owner. I could have saved them a lot of wear and tear on their body by just waiting those few extra months for them. But yeah, so hiking, I start with on leash. Once I get comfortable, I always have my leash on me, and I remove it if we're somewhere safe that I know that's not near a road, people aren't around. But I also put an e-collar on them at all times when we're hiking and biking. At the end of the day, my guys are Huskies and Akitas. So if they see a fox or a squirrel or a deer, they're running. So giving them that quick little check-in of a vibrate, like, no, pay attention to mom, they'll always come back. Same with if we're biking, because we bike in large groups, they tend to jump around the crew to see who is biking. But yeah, we just do check-ins with them. We stop regularly, give them water breaks, basic things like that. If we're picking a hiking trail and it's warmer, I'm making sure that I'm picking a hiking trail that's shaded. It has a water break, somewhere that I can make sure that we're stopping for 5-10 minutes. They're cooling down. I'm making sure that they're cooling all the way up to their chest, so their body temperature is going to drop before we carry on. If I'm biking and hiking, if their tongue is going crazy and they have no control of their tongue, that means they're tired. Wait till they get the control of their tongue. It sounds funny, but when you start actually seeing it,
you can tell the action as it's happening.
Yeah, when it's just happening.
It's very prevalent. Yeah. Mine are obvious because my American Bully and my French Bulldog, my Frenchie is the one. You have to watch for them because she's got the shorter snout. She's only got one little tiny finger, which I'm very happy about that one finger on a Frenchie, because I'm lucky that she can actually breathe. A lot of breeds that are that shorter snout, when they start hiking or getting worked up there, then that's where you see that heavier pant kind of come to them, especially with your guys being that extra fluffy, thick coat, so much fur. And then there's mine where they don't have that, but they do enjoy, they love when we head out on bikes. They love when we head out on a hike. But when she starts to have that tongue that's just hanging out and keeps on coming back to her face, smacking like this, that little paddle thing, it's obvious. She needs a break. She needs to cool down. We need her to catch her breath and stuff like that. My hikes look different than yours, though. Although we have the same tools. So the same tools that you take out on a hike are the same ones I'm using. So I usually have a backpack, or my husband has a hiking backpack, where I'm so happy that at least he'll carry a bunch of my stuff too if I don't want to carry it. But with our dogs being smaller now compared to my previous pack of 3 dogs where I had one of each size, I'm talking extra large breed, medium size, and then a tiny little Chihuahua at the time. Our hikes then still look the same as they do now. I got a backpack. I've got I have my pop-up little water bowl. I like those rubber ones. Those are great because they take no space. All we've got to do is carry the water, which has a bit of weight. And then, of course, I've got a couple snacks for myself and for our dogs, because as much as they're getting the water back in as we're walking and stuff like that. They still need some energy, I find, especially if we're doing big hikes up in Algonquin. I know there's that. And then also because of where we live, Calabogie, if you're doing any of the big trails and the big mountain and stuff that's out there, it's beautiful, especially at this time of year. But I find that my dogs, yes, I usually have a remote collar on them just because when we're out in the open area, I have mine trained, but I start on a leash first. So that way they learn those cues, same as yours. Doesn't change for the size of the dog, still going to be used the same way. The odd time I will have a retractable, like a flexi, but I don't usually like flexis just because of too much freedom and stuff. But for my little one, especially when I can see I usually have to watch the skies because when you're out in Algonquin and all of a sudden you notice that you got big birds heading over, they've noticed that I've got little things on the ground. You have to watch those ones as well too here in Canada. Same thing in the US. You have to watch above. If you got a Chihuahua or you got a Frenchie or something small low to the ground like a pug, it's happened at my cottage before where I had them actually swooping down on our deck. So out on those hikes, I always watch those too. Now later in the year, I find this is also where you've got a lot of deer and moose and stuff like that. They usually stay around the edges of the trail, but my dogs usually are, especially my little one, she likes to pick out and say, hey, there's something over there. And she will point it out. But that's also where I have bear spray in my pack when needed. It's an easy grab to go out with. The other thing too is I know a lot of people in the area also have bells. Bells. They've got bells too. Yeah. So I like when they do their little check-ins because I do let them go ahead of us. Mine usually like to hang out behind because my American Bully, he just likes to follow along in your shadow. That way he can stay cool on them as well. But I find that change in elevation is a great way for them to get their exercise in. Plus, it's a great adventure. We all have a great time, but it's also really good physically for them. Uneven ground instead of just always on concrete, you can tell the difference. We see it in the dogs that come into the shop. We see it a lot of the times with the dogs that come into the shop where you can actually tell just by looking at their paws from time to time. You can tell the dogs that wear down their nails if they're used to running on concrete, like in town and around. The ones that are with the regular runners and hikers and stuff like that. I find that when I have my dogs on uneven ground, that it's a little bit more beneficial for them too, because I find that it helps to build stronger muscular structure along the back with the shoulders and the hips as well too. Didn't think that I had to worry about that when I got my first set of dogs, but it actually did help when we'd be out hiking. Instead of me sticking to regular rocky trails, we'd go to more of those soft bedded trails, just because it was easier on them as they got older. And it was more kinder to their hips and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We even have some great snowshoeing trails. So hiking can be all season. You can be doing it in the dead of winter. You could be doing it all summer long. Yeah. Really keep in mind the temperatures because your dogs can get frostbite or heat stroke, all of those things. So keep in mind both temperatures. They feel things differently than we do. We do get both extremes in the area. We get the plus 40s and the minus 40s. So keep in mind for those things. But yeah.
Especially one last thing for biking. When you had made a great mention of paying attention to when the dog is actually matured and is ready to now start running. What I like to say for a lot of people that like to have a lot of that physicality in their routine with them jogging, running, and the biking. That physical exertion on your animal, as much as it is that you're getting into it, you need to make sure that your dog is being brought into it and you don't just head out on a 5K. It's going to be that you're going to start to increase in small increments. You're going to start out, today we're going to run for 1. We'll go for 1 and we'll walk the rest of it. Then the next time that you head out, it's the same thing, the way that you're going to introduce physical abilities to your own body as a human, the same way that we want to introduce them to our pets, that we want them to be able to build up to being able to go those 7 and 10Ks with you, especially for those breeds that really want to go, those high energy, high activity ones that you have to get that physical run in, or they're on that bike. If you've got a bunch of huskies and they want to run out, it's a great way to do. But same way that you would introduce it to yourself as a human, you want to make sure that you do it where you can program it into them.
Yeah.
It's
slow
not
and steady. Slow and steady.
Yeah. As much as my guys were seasoned in biking, we fat biked more with my dogs or early spring. We never really biked with the huskies in the summer because it's too hot. They're fluffy. It was too hard on them. And even at that point, we wouldn't go more than 12K. And that was if they were seasoned, because we could easily go mountain biking for 20 to 30K. They can't do that. And we had to be realistic with that. And if that meant we weren't taking them every day because we wanted to do a long day, that was fine. They still got a good 7 to 9K was where my huskies would be happy. Anything more than that, they'd start limping, they'd get sore, or they'd just straight up slow down. My female got to a point that she just stopped and turned around and started going the other way on the trail because she was done. She didn't realize we were almost to the parking lot, and going backwards was actually doing double, but we found her, we got her back on track, and she was like, no, F this, mama, I'm out. But saying that, we're also in an area here, Michelle touched on it, in the fall. We're in a hunting area. So making sure that your dogs have orange on them in that fall hunting season. I have huskies. They look like coyotes. I'm making sure that I'm putting something on them visible that's showing that they are a dog. They are a pet. Unfortunately, this does happen every once in a while where a household pet does get shot. And it's unfortunate, but making them high vis, putting a bell on them, it really makes them stick out a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking all that safety precaution and measurements, especially if you're heading out into the woods. We know there's different areas where they will make mention of it. I know up in where we live in the valley, that it is made known, and there are posts and there's news and radio that will say, hey, the hunters are out, make sure that you guys are visible, that kind of a thing. I know that a lot of like the hiking trails and areas, they usually end up posting certain things like, I can't remember, I think it's the research woods that we've got in the area. They'll actually say, hey, you know what, the hunters are out. It might not be a good time to head in there with your dog at this moment, especially when the season kicks up in the year. That's just one of the things that we have in the area that we have to tend, but it changes in different areas across Canada. But whenever those seasons perk up, just make sure that you're aware and that your dogs are actually tagged and visible is the biggest thing. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked anything from our hiking and biking episode today, drop a comment down below if there's anything that you know that you like to do hiking and biking with your dog. If you happen to have any questions, drop them there as well. And we'd like to see you tune into our next video. So don't forget to like, subscribe. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and always here on YouTube. We'll see you again in the next video. Thank you.